off lock, stock, and barrel. Rather, what we're seeing and have seen in the language is that the word disappearance is going to be used with relative to people of power and influence, and we're going to see a lot of them start to disappear. Well, we're seeing the disappearance language in a lot of the foreign press already, and it relates to people going offshore in their yacht, and the yacht not coming back and not being found, and so on. Some of this is probably the result of the intersectarian warfare going on, and people like Cheney's little hit squad running around taking care of some of the elite that have irritated some of the other elite. And there is a subcomponent of that. But then there's also this strange disappearance. But it's not en masse. It will be enough that it'll come to our attention and we'll wonder, like, that's strange. But it's not like, that, the whole power of elite of a particular country is going to be, jetted off to Mars or anything. That would be quite wonderful, but I don't think it will occur.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I understand that. I'd be a lot happier if the answer was, they're all departing on May 14th.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a great idea?
Let's all throw them a party and then get back to work.
Yeah, let's all it's New Year, right?
Right.
All right. This next question is regarding a Dr. Stephen Greer. He recently stated that his group had a 0-point device, that it's just a matter of time until it comes out, but that it's a done deal. Is this true, or do you know anything about it?
We get a lot of information relative to the free energy information, and we do show that that there already has been a fundamental breakthrough. Our linguistics have been talking about it for a while. It gave this a particular point in spring prior to summer. We're going to see some visibility of it in summer, but it'll really come out in November-December period as almost a counter, so to speak, a good news little tidbit to all of the other bad news that will be coming around at that point. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Okay, so basically, yes, I believe that there have been the fundamental breakthroughs. They have occurred, and we're going to start seeing some of that work its way out to us, but I wouldn't expect to see it until later in fall.
Okay.
I mean, in the mainstream press.
Okay, so we come to the last question that we are going to take in this series, or this time frame, which is the Summer of Hell, and I think that actually gets into our next altar report, part of that in the part 4.
Yeah, Summer of Hell is a wide term, and we really say that it's going to start on about the 14th, about mid-May, and for a wide variety of reasons, and it'll actually continue through and merge into a very nasty fall. Although technically summer is going to end, as it always does with the equinox, the emotional framework that has been set up by it will carry through at least into mid-2010. And as I say, we'll see a spike in emotions around the U.S. relative to the economy and our place in international affairs in November, December that will cause actually a great deal of commotion and upset, both within the powers that be and within the unaware observer who's tied into all of their little games. The Summer of Hell is going to be remembered, I think, for the hyperinflation later and the absolute crumbling of the dollar as the global reserve currency, and then the problems that are attendant upon the planet that way. And some of the problems are quite severe. As I say, as soon as the dollar dies, as soon as the dollar is no longer the official currency, about 2 billion people start sliding down into the area where they're trying to live on $2 a day or less, simply because of the way in which we've all come to depend on the machinations of the powers that be through paper currency. And that's going to cause serious problems because a lot of people are going to die from starvation and malnutrition and the attendant disease states and so on. It will not be good. So really that was our characterization for the Summer of Hell, is that globally it's going to be quite severe. Any given individual in any given state within the U.S. may or may not suffer that badly until we get to the hyperinflation, and then we're all in it together. And that'll trigger all kinds of undeniability expressions within the populace. We're going to see strange things, roving mobs that one day just decide, okay, that's it, we haven't eaten for a week, so we're going to go and take over that factory and eat everything in it. That kind of a deal. It's not going to be a good time for us.
No, and you talked about that in this part 4, which was, to be careful of groups and traveling and things like that. So maybe that's something else that you can talk about that's is in this latest report?
Yeah, we're seeing a convergence of factors here, and we need to be aware of them as individuals, because the more you're aware of a pattern, as the Buddhists say, the easier it is to step out of it. And some of the patterns are going to be very subtle that we won't really instantly recognize, and that may be that, might be magnetics are actually causing, because of the magnetic pressure cooker effect from the ribbon of magnetics from the Milky Way galaxy, might actually cause effects on human mind. We've been saying this for some time, and I mean, it's a brutally difficult days to discuss this, but of people going crazy and running amok. And so we've seen recent instances here in the United States of that yesterday and today. And we're going to see more of them, to the point where I think it'll probably be a multiple times a day occurrence and may even drop off the radar relative to the powers that be in their press, because there'll just be so many examples of it. So it will be very necessary for people who we call aware observers to not only monitor their own emotional state, but to be aware that when they're in crowds, that we may find really aberrant behavior and crowd psychoses taking over, simply because of all of the pressures. Economic, social disruption, the disruption of the social contract, because later on, if we're correct, the federal government's going to start repudiating certain parts of its social contract. People that are living on fixed incomes won't do well in hyperinflationary periods, et cetera, et cetera. And this will all combine over the course of this summer to produce situations where crowds just go kind of bats for a while. And that can cause chaos and disruption. And if you happen to be caught up in it, the thing to do will be to act as a cork, float across the top of it, and get out, because it will not end well.
Well, and this gets back to when the events really started to take place, really started to change. Was back in, wasn't it October 2008?
Correct.
It was a marker, as it were.
And never are we going back, yes.
Right. And everyone, was waiting for some kind of a huge indication, as people do, that something's going to fall out of the sky, and that's going to be the marker, and that's how you know. But
right.
it really was the shift. It was just
Correct.
the shift.
And it was palpable, and we recorded it, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I even talked about it. I talked about what was going on in October, and I said, this is just going to be one of those things. It's just going to it's like going to gather its own energy, and that's exactly what's going on here with that.
And it's going to continue, yeah.
Oh yeah, we're never going to be where we were at.
And that's probably a good thing, yeah.
Yeah. Individually, collectively, we're not going to be where we're at. We're either going to learn how to go with the flow of these changes, or we're not.
Yeah, that's going to be the real challenge there. Learn to be a cork. Yes. Yeah,
and the challenge is going to be, if you're going with the flow, then you've got to understand that not everyone is, and that's what the report was talking about.
Yeah.
Was that you've got to brace yourself. You've got to be even more aware of reading people from a different level.
And it'll also become harder. That's going to be one of the more difficult aspects of this, is because the people's behavior will change. Many of the clues to that kind of behavior won't be as reliable as they have been in the past.
Right, exactly. So it's about, I think you called it the matting of crowds, is what you called it in that metadata there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Terra winds, the floods, still
part of the overall developing global coastal phenomena, because as the coast change, it changes the currents in the ocean, which change the amount of moisture in the air, which changes the atmospheric currents. And we're talking real rivers here. Our data indicate that we're going to be picking up 2 and 3 and 4 times the amount of usual moisture into the atmospheric rivers that we call the jet stream, and it's going to cause the jet stream to change, inducing flooding, drying other places up, massive wildfires, inability to put them out because the jet stream changes are going to be infrequent, irregular, but they won't be returning to previous patterns. That's another aspect of the undeniability. By the time we get to fall, we're going to recognize that we're in a whole new world, folks, and that predictability for weather and stuff it may be out the door.
So what happens to all those weathercasters that's been forecasting weather for all this time?
Well, they're going to join the rest of us in being unemployed.
Unemployment line. There you go. That's just because anymore, even now when you turn on the weather, it is just so not predictable. They say, "Oh, it's going to be a nice day," and you go out and it's, you know, you got an ice storm.
Yeah.
Well,
It's becoming a joke. Yes.
Yeah, it really is. I honestly, that would be one of the professions that I'd almost be humiliated to have.
Yeah.
You know, in the sense of where we're at, because there is no predicting it, because the rules no longer apply.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the big issue, and that's part of it. It goes back to that undeniability. So many people have been able to deny it for these past 5 or 6 or 7 years as it's been advancing in more blatant states, so to speak, in terms of the climate change and planetary change. But, you know, when you got giant volcanoes creating whole new islands off of Tonga, and pretty soon we're going to see larger eruptions on undersea nature that'll change currents, and then the jet stream changes in some places that have never had rain get years and years and years worth of rain over the course of just a few days. These kind of things are going to really slap the unaware observer right out of that state of contentment that they've had. Even though it's been disrupted, they're still sort of in it because they can put some energy in it and think, oh yeah, these people are crazy. It's only going to be 3 millimeter rise in sea level over the next, you know, every year for the next decade. And it's like, well, a lot of that's going to go away this year, and that's going to cause its own problems because these people won't have a cognitive approach to rebuilding their worldview, and so we're going to see people that are running around basically in a state of cognitive dissonance, trying to put together a new view of the planet that makes sense to them, asking questions, falling in with cults, with people that don't know what they're talking about, providing power to people that shouldn't have had it, et cetera, et cetera. The sort of things you see in chaos. And it's just going to spread and sort of all come back together and merge into hyperinflation, and, you know, the good time of that the government's promising is going to be coming any day now. Prosperity just around the corner, that kind of thing. Oh, we've hit the bottom.
And yet the bottom still continues.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, here's one of the things is that recently, here in the United States, there's been a lot of new rules and regulations that's been kind of put down. One of them is the H.R. 875, which is a law that they're trying to mandate for, you know, supposedly safer food controls and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, we have all kinds of that stuff that's been passing, you know, in the House, and you know, the president is signing these bills into order. And what I got the other day is that, you know, it's okay for them to do all this because really none of that is going to make a difference, because there's not going to, if any of these things are actually implemented, they're not going to be implemented long enough for them to make a huge, huge impact on anything that they're doing in the recent now.
That is the way that the language is coming out, as though the powers that be, and basically we're looking at corporate state merging, which is a definition of fascism. The corporatocracy is dictating to the legislature the kind of laws they want passed, but and then they're implementing them as though you can actually legislate some things. But as an aside, they're also facing the same kind of resource squeeze as everybody else. At the same time that the government is being told to enforce the, you know, you can't grow organic food in your own garden kind of a thing, they won't have any money to hire people to do the enforcement. And at this same time, the corporations are going to start being squeezed by the same economic forces. And so they're in the same state as the rest of us relative to the crumbling of the dollar as the reserve currency. And they're going to still continue this stuff as though it matters. Our data suggests that they can be as fascist as they want and get as much of the laws passed as they want, et cetera, et cetera. The energy is no longer with them, and they won't have the ability to carry it out. And they're going to run into some serious walls of international crises and so on in November,